Hello and welcome. Today I wanted to take a moment to introduce you to the basics of my new superhero game, Stalwart, the world's niftiest superhero RPG. So the game is something that I've been working on and off for 30 years now. I've developed and written and published several superhero systems, and I do feel strongly that this is the best, most intuitive, most immersive game that I've created. So I'm really proud of it, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the basics of it. The first thing that makes this game what it is, the heart of the game, is this sliding dice scale. And so everything, the four, five primary things in this game, are rated on this scale from normal, represented by a D4, all the way through ultimate, represented by a D20. And as you can see in that right column, the descriptor column, I borrowed the phaser rip sort of concepts just because I really like those. I liked the way that struck me at 13 or 14 years old. It still strikes me today, and I think it's useful for a player to sort of know where that stands. So average to excellent, remarkable to incredible, amazing, magnificent, and unbelievable. That's a pretty comprehensive set of tiers that covers almost everything I could think of that you'd want your superhero to be able to do and really differentiates the levels. Then on the far left is the tier, which really primarily is your character level. Unlike a lot of traditional pen and paper role playing games, there's no real level progression in Stalwart. The idea being that your hero is your hero, and that's kind of where they stay, which is more comic accurate. I do have some ideas for later on for a way that if you really want to have character progression over time, you could do that, but it would be a very slow progression. But the point being here that most characters are going to be in the super between Paragon and Legendary range, really, with super sort of the meat and potatoes of the system. Most superheroes are super level. So that D10 die as a super tier character is your basic action die. Most things you do, you're going to roll D10 to see if you were successful. So if you make an attack, or if you try to open a door, or if you try to convince somebody to do something, D10 is your basic die to do that. So your action die is your tier die, D10 for a super level character. Then what happens is you've got four traits. These are more result focused. So your might, your strength and endurance, your mind, your intellect, your awareness, your power, your raw superhuman power, your ability to channel superhuman energy in some way, and then your reflex, your hand-eye coordination, your agility. Those things are primarily result driven or defense driven. So for an attack with if you try to punch something, you're going to roll your tier die, D10 if super, and then roll your might for damage. So if you're not a very strong character, you're going to only roll D4 for damage, versus if you're the world's biggest hulking brute, you're going to roll a D20 for damage. The same thing with your power. So if your raw ability to channel flame energy, for instance, is relatively low, a D6 or a D8, well, then you're only going to roll that die to see how much damage you do. But if your power is upwards of D16 or even D20, then you're going to do a tremendous amount of damage with your flame. The other thing that those traits give you is what's called a static value. So if you go back to this chart, that their third column there, SV, gives you what is in effect half the dice value. So your might, for instance, if it's D12, legendary level might, you can probably lift a tank. Well, with D12 might, you have a static endure of 6. So endure would be for things like resisting a poison or something that affects you physically, sort of like a system check would be against the target of 6. With a reflex of D8, you have exceptional, remarkable, right, hand-eye coordination. And so with that, an enemy would need to roll a 4 or better because the SV of your remarkable reflex is 4. So they would have to, on their die, roll a 4 or better in order to hit you with a physical attack. And the entire game is predicated around that. Then that half SV is used for other secondary abilities. Some things are limited by half your SV, or that becomes the cap on various talents or what are called in this game tags that you can pick up. So that half SV is used throughout here. But once you know this chart, you really know the whole game. Everything is based on this. And so it's pretty straightforward. If you have legendary something, a legendary ability to control magic, which is called true magic in the game, that when you try to cast spells, you're doing so at D12. If they have a static value, that's a 6, and if you use half the static value, that's 3. So all you really ever need to know is the die, and then you could take that, cut it in half, and cut it in half again, and round down, and you know everything you need to know. So once you've played the game for a little while, you internalize this chart because all you really need to know is the dice, and then you just have to divide by 2 and divide by 2 again, and you could always get to whatever result you need. Everything comes back to this chart. And so it keeps the game very intuitive, very easy to remember, very clean. And it's one of my favorite things about it.